Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video. My wife cheated on me with my older brother and ruined my life. In the spring of 2013, I relocated to Lake Tahoe and met a Bulgarian girl on a work visa who I fell passionately in love with nearly immediately that summer. I'm a relatively laid-back guy, but when it comes to ladies, whether or not I'm attracted to them, I become worried and lose my calm. However, when I first saw this girl, whom I'll name Lily, I knew I had to catch her attention no matter what. The first few weeks were awkward, as I tried to slip her my phone number and basically waited for her to contact me. I had nearly given up on her and was on a date with a Japanese girl when she texted me and asked if I wanted to hang together. I'm embarrassed to confess it, but I basically abandoned the Asian girl and drove directly to Lily's place to pick her up. One thing led to another, and we were cool for the summer since we knew she'd be returning to Bulgaria when the summer was through. We were like best buddies who pretty much agreed on everything and appreciated whatever the other did. We'd go out to clubs and people would ask if we were dating, and we'd just sort of stare at each other and shrug because we didn't know either. We'd speak about it, but we didn't believe the title would make our brief time together any more bearable. A few months later, my mother, who lives in Idaho, confided in me about her depression. I promised Lily that I was going to drive directly after work to visit her on the weekend and be back in time for my next duty. She wanted to come with me, and I said yes since a road trip with this lovely girl is something I will remember for the rest of my life. Long story short, we arrive and my mother and daughter get along swimmingly. Now it's time to go. As we're about to get into the Jeep, my mother rushes out, grabs my arm, and says, "You need to marry this lady." I was surprised that my mother would say that since she had never really supported any of my previous relationships, and here she is pushing me to marry a lady she had just met that weekend. On the 8-hour journey back, we took our time absorbing what my mother had said. We toyed with the notion for a while, and before long, we were so thrilled to be married that we nearly detoured to Vegas and married that day. But we changed our minds since she wanted to return to Europe to continue her studies, and we learned from other people that it takes longer to secure a visa if you are already married rather than engaged. In October, she is back in Bulgaria, and I have returned to Idaho, where we are trying all we can to bring her back. It took a little more than a year to get her back, despite the thousands of dollars we donated, legal forms we filled out, and court appearances. We couldn't wait to fall asleep with each other through Skype the whole time. Finally, we got her down, and I went all the way to San Francisco to pick her up since Boise doesn't have an international airport, and she would have spent the night at the airport with the layovers. I'm summarizing the backstory so the readers understand how betrayed I felt. We married on November 9, 2014. When I say that seeing into her eyes was the most amazing moment of my life, I'm not exaggerating. That surprised me since the wedding was so tiny and low-key. My mother, my younger brother, and his girlfriend were the only ones there. Months later, both she and I were depressed. I'm not sure why it felt like we were always ill, and she simply began being mean to me. I used to think I couldn't do anything wrong in her sight and that everything I said made her laugh. Anything I said or did now only irritated her. But I was so taken with her that I let her walk all over me. She never did anything for herself. She didn't cook, she didn't drive. I'd even go grab her stuff since she was too lazy to get out of bed. As time passed, I began to see a pattern. I would tell her everything, and she would practically put her name on items she desired just for herself: food, shampoo, laundry basket, etc. "How come I share everything with you and you never want to share anything with me?" I asked her one day, largely as a joke. She said I simply did it to get back at her. Guys, I've never yelled at her before, but what she said enraged me so much that I stood up and pushed her, thinking about all the things I do for her on a daily basis without even asking for a thank you. She merely looked at me and remarked, "Nice." Before I left work, I apologized for touching her and stated it was extremely wrong of me, but you, Lily, if that's what you truly believe. And from that day until I found out she was cheating on me, I had a tiny bit of animosity for her in the back of my mind that eventually made my heart poisoned. Now for the meat of the narrative, which I'm sure you're more interested in. My elder brother, a self-proclaimed Christian who was extremely family-oriented at the time, would continually guilt-trip me and my younger brother for not doing things with the family that he thought we should be doing. This man is Mr. Holy, but he's also an addict. When I was a youngster, he would constantly put porn magazines in my face, and when I got my first smartphone, he couldn't wait to tell me what the greatest porn sites were. First sign. Torture, both physical and psychological, was his way. The more he aged, the less of that he had. Yet his enormous ego remained, if not grew, unabated. So, in the privacy of my own house, I would sometimes have bad things to say about him. Lily was usually the one who sprang to his rescue whenever I uttered such things. Second clue. Every family gathering, whether for the holidays, my father's birthday, or the anniversaries of his death, was always about with him. Jokes, memes, and related classic movies. All of the music he listens to is about. He got my wife a copy of 50 Shades of Grey for Christmas one year. Third clue. As I previously said, Lily is from Eastern Europe, and her traditions were bizarre. She kissed males on the lips in front of me, so I thought, well, I think it's odd, but obviously she comes from a touchy-feely society, whatever. I couldn't help but notice she was quite touchy-feely with my elder brother later on, to the point where my mother came to me in tears and told me she was afraid my brother and her were playing about. My younger brother's girlfriend even approached me with fury in her eyes, claiming that she kissed my elder brother in my mother's home. I was furious at my mother and my younger brother's girlfriend for even thinking such a thing might happen. First, I don't want you guys talking about my wife like this, and second, Ryan is my brother, and he would tell me if she was attempting to do anything, I say. After all, he is a self-righteous Christian who cares about his family. Maybe a little too much at times. I nearly told Lily everything that others had been saying me, but I decided against it since I didn't want to hurt her emotions about how my family felt about her. However, I began to notice small cues. We were getting along just great, never argued, but they had dwindled to a trickle. And when I got into bed, if I even skimmed her, she'd retreat and recoil, plainly so she wouldn't touch me. As a result, I became suspicious. I found out the day I found out that me and her are in a fantastic mood with each other, which I believe caused her to let down her guard. We were watching Good Mythical Morning on YouTube when she started putting product in her hair, which caused her to halt the show to wash it out, and she claimed she'd be right back. Finally, she left her phone unattended. Thinking about myself, I can finally set my mind at ease knowing that nothing horrible is happening. I could tolerate flirting since we're all human. But what I saw stunned and bewildered me to the point that I couldn't believe what I was reading. Because this is my first Reddit post, I'll attempt to have the text connected in some way. At one point while reading, I grew so enraged that I couldn't see straight, making reading almost hard. I stepped into the bathroom quietly and questioned her about her connection with Ryan, and I could see the silhouette of her head fall down in shame through the shower curtain. My life had turned into a genuine nightmare at that point. I was so stunned that I didn't say anything to her, but wow. Drove out into the desert and sat and gazed at the mountains till the sun went down. I'd say I'm sleeping out there, but that's an exaggeration. For weeks following that, I slept on the floor. In retrospect, I should have had that BTCH sleep on the floor, but it only goes to show how much I adored Lily. And, regrettably, I still do, even though I no longer love her. When I got home from work one day and noticed her was sleeping comfortably in her bed, I nearly leapt on top of her and began smashing her face in with my fist. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life because I felt like I was being possessed by a demon. I locked myself in the bathroom and wept the most I'd cried since learning the news. I've been more sensitive to marijuana smoking as I've gotten older. If I smoke too much, it causes me a lot of worry. But this night, I had to smoke bowl after bowl after bowl to keep my down on the ground and not damage her. I've always been a really perceptive person, and no matter how high I got, I was simply exploring the depths of my mind. And I was getting irritated thinking about how this always happened to me after all we'd gone through to bring her here. But then there were the wonderful memories, and my rage was utterly eclipsed by the love and pleasure she offered me. I convinced myself that love really conquers everything and that I could forgive her with all my heart. I was so enthralled by these sensations that I went from wanting to bludgeon her to waking her up, kissing her, and telling her that I still wanted to be with her. How stupid I was. I informed her about my insights the following day, and she wasn't delighted. I figured she was still humiliated over being discovered as a cheater. I wanted to take her on a road trip as in the old days, so I planned a vacation to Oregon for April 20th. She promised not only to go on the vacation, but also to attempt to make our marriage work. She was behaving pretty distant the whole ride up there. I started caressing her leg like I used to, and I could see she was stiff. And, as if on cue, she began treating me like garbage once again. The only time she was pleasant was when we were at dispensaries and she was ecstatic about all the marijuana she was purchasing. Anyway, on the way back, we were detained at the border by Idaho State Police for possessing more than misdemeanor quantities of marijuana. To make a long story short, I told the police the truth from the beginning, and instead of charging me with a crime and detaining me, he just charged me with a few misdemeanors. I remember turning to Lily and saying, "Whatever happens, I'm pleased I'm going through this with you." I was anticipating something out of a movie, where she turns to me, the sun glittering in her eyes, to tell me whether she felt the same way. "Yeah, I think," was the response. That was the moment I realized that no matter what I tried, it would never work between us again. Returning home, I was in so much pain, and Lily was on cloud 9. When I came home, I went into a profound sadness. Lily was sitting in front of the television, laughing as if nothing had occurred. My melancholy was ruining her day, so she inquired as to what was wrong. I snapped right away. "What's the problem? What exactly is the problem? You've damaged not just myself, but also my whole family. And now I'm going to court for bringing you on a vacation that I hoped would rekindle our romance but instead made me detest you even more. Now I'm irritated with." And I said, "Why, of all people, Ryan? Why is it my brother? Do you have feelings for him?" Silence. "Do you love him?" I said again, turning her around. She just glanced down and nodded silently. I punched a hole in my glass cabinet door and wounded myself badly. I then replied gently, "You may want to go. It's going to become very bad. Don't come back until you're getting your stuff to get thee out." I yelled as she walked away. She walked away. I duct taped paper towels to my arm to help reduce the bleeding, but it only helped so much. I dragged my to Walmart, blood flowing and all, and purchased some bandages, enormous black garbage bags, and a massive Cambro container to put all her junk in. I'm sure the folks at Walmart thought I was insane, but I was in such a fog. I had blurry tunnel vision and didn't care about anything or anybody. When I arrived home, I turned on a few albums and began packing her stuff. Using the sole copies of images from our wedding, I named the bags socks, shirts, and miscellaneous. She arrived the following day and grabbed it, and I've only spoken to her maybe twice since. Only because we had to appear in court for the cannabis charges. And it would always ruin me. Do you want to play the really messed up part? I can't even look at previous family photographs with her in them since it's always her and Ryan next to one other. Not only that, but I'm unable to look at previous images in general since Ryan is in more than half of them. So this amounts to nearly 25 years of stuff that I now need to forget. And then there was this. I acquired a new laptop to start again so I wouldn't have to view her images or movies, and when I attempted to export the pictures from my phone, I somehow received pictures from my elder brother's phone. When I saw the thumbnails, I thought to myself, this looks like. When I got a closer look, I realized it was Lily's images. I prayed God to be photos that I had forgotten about capturing. When I clicked on them, I saw that the room didn't appear familiar, and to be honest, mine doesn't look that strange. And then there was. There are many of images of my brother and wife that would make Hugh Hefner blush. That was in April of this year. Since then, I've been messed up. To fill the gap, I attempted one-night encounters as I used to do in my younger days. But each time, the void became wider and bigger. I suppose that's what occurs when you're in love for the first time. Even in the midst of some random female I met, I came to a halt and urged her to go because I was disgusted with not just her but also with myself. I've evolved into this troubled artist. To pass the time, I simply cut photos out of magazines and stick them all over my walls and anything else. It is, in fact, incredibly healing. I've become a hermit, going out solely to work and to get food. Most days, I simply remain at home and cry myself to sleep, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. If anything changes, I'll provide an update. But I can admit that pouring all of this out feels fantastic, even if it has reopened some old scars. It was almost as though I was getting something off my chest. Thank you for your time, Reddit.